CEO's shocking discovery. Fiancée's hidden ghostly power transforms family rivalry into love. Matthew Johnson stood at the edge of his balcony overlooking Maplewood, its historic streets lined with greenery and echoes of an unearthed past. The tension in his chest was a grim reminder of the expectations that had been thrust upon him, a family legacy tied to ancient grudges against the affluent Smiths. In recent months, his rise to tech stardom only magnified the weight, each success punctuated by his father's relentless voice, urging him to erase the tarnish smeared by their long-standing rivalry. The warmth of the sun felt out of reach as he recalled the argument had just hours earlier, their voices clashing like thunder in the hallways of their home. "You have to crush them, Matthew," his father had shouted, eyes ablaze with unyielding tradition. It was the same mantra, the same suffocating belief that promised him affirmation through domination. He was a CEO with gold-plated visions, yet uncertainty gnawed at him like a rusty chain, binding him to a past he didn't fully understand. But as the sky shifted colors, so did Matthew's thoughts. The notion of wealth and victory felt transient compared to the possibility of healing a rift that had long scarred their family. Tonight it would be different. His eyes searched for Sarah, his fiancée, who immersed herself in the world of history, unraveling truths buried beneath the soil of Maplewood. She brought a brightness to his somber reflections, a soft reminder that there were layers to everything, even family feuds. Yet even her presence didn't grant him peace. As her voice wove stories about spirits and unfulfilled promises, Matthew couldn't shake the doubt threatening to unravel his purpose. Was he merely a pawn in a game dictated by ancestral bitterness? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As he paced their living room later that night, Sarah dove into her research, candles flickering shadows on the walls. The atmosphere crackled with something electric, as if history was coming alive around them. And then, in a moment fraught with tension and hope, she unwittingly summoned a spirit, its ancient grief swirling around them. Matthew's breath hitched as he witnessed her dig for the raw truth he feared to confront, that maybe the Smiths weren't the enemy he was led to believe. What if understanding stood where animosity had long kept him blind? Yet Matthew's heart raced with haunting emotions. His parents' legacy was an unyielding fortress, one that had held him captive for too long. He felt stuck between loyalty to a bloodline anchored in pride and the irresistible draw toward reconciliation that Sarah represented. And as the veils of history began to thin, all familiar comforts morphed into questions that clawed for answers. Could he step beyond the suffocating grip of tradition, or was he doomed to walk the path laid out before him like generations past? His thoughts swirled and crashed within him, each revelation a wave threatening to drown him. The night deepened, every passing moment amplifying the echo of voices in his mind, a spiral of family loyalty against a burgeoning desire for unity. He closed his eyes, grappling with anguish as he hovered on that precipice of change, caught between the chains of the past and the tantalizing whisper of love's redemptive power. The decision loomed, heavy in the air, as Maplewood watched silently, awaiting his move in a story woven from pain and possibility. Would Matthew choose the path of inheritance, or dare to draw from the love that could reshape his world? The following day dawned cloudy, mirroring the turmoil within Matthew's chest as he arrived at his office. The rhythmic tapping of laptop keys in the dim meeting room amplified the silence that hung over his mind. Attending to the needs of his growing tech company seemed trivial against the backdrop of his inner conflict. As colleagues filed in, exchanging friendly banter, Matthew's thoughts spiraled back to Sarah and her revelations about the Smith family. He had always viewed their wealth as arrogance, their influence as a threat. Never had he considered them anything other than rivals. The weekly strategy session commenced, but Matthew felt like a ghost among the living. He barely processed the numbers his CFO presented, his mind haunted by the specter of possibility. What if the Smiths were not just competitors, but potential allies in a changing world? The thought clashed violently with his upbringing, a silent battle raging between instinct and inclination. Matthew? His CFO's concerned voice broke through his reverie. Do you have any input on the merger proposal? This could significantly enhance our market share.
Right.
The merger. Matthew pushed the concept to the front of his thoughts. His father had drilled into him the importance of victory, the necessity of domination in business dealings. What if he altered that approach? The Smiths were formidable, yet their resources, especially in broadcast and communications, were unparalleled. Could this be the opportunity to forge a different path? As though awakening from a dream, he seized a pen and jotted notes, ideas flowing freely now. The proposal morphed into a potential collaborative endeavor, the very antithesis of everything he'd been taught. Yet new concepts came with their own fears. Realigning his perception required a reckoning with his father's expectations. Matthew realized he had to take deliberate action, to make a decision that reflected not just his professional aspirations, but also his personal journey. It was about more than just business. It was about creating a legacy that wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. Each calculated shift carried the weight of history. He felt the winds of change beginning to stir, pushing against the barricades of familial tradition. Stephen, Matthew's longtime friend and advisor, noticed his sudden shift in focus. You seem different today. Are we going in a new direction? With newfound determination, Matthew met Stephen's gaze. Yes, I believe we are. We need to revisit the Smith proposal, this time as partners, not enemies. The urgency in his voice caught the team's attention. Whispers erupted, filled with uncertainty and skepticism, but a flicker of hope sparked inside him. Could this be the pivotal moment he needed to transform not just his company, but his family legacy? After the meeting, Matthew retreated to his office. The weight of his decision hung heavily, yet his heart beat with newfound purpose. He picked up the phone, hesitating only a moment before dialing. The realization that he might be opening himself to the very people his family despised sent a surge of adrenaline through him. Hello, is this Mr. Smith? He spoke into the receiver, his voice steady despite the chaotic torrent of emotions rushing through him. It was time to confront not just the rivalries of business, but the ones formed by blood, the ones that sat entrenched in animosity. As he listened to the voice on the other end, determination coursed through him. This would be his test, a true reflection of his character. Matthew Johnson here.
We need to talk.
With those words, he took a step toward uncharted territory, setting the stage for a potential breakthrough, not only for himself, but for Sarah, for the Smiths, for a future that could finally be rewritten. The moment of truth approached. Could he navigate the complicated expression of his family's history and foster a new beginning? Matthew's heart raced as Mr. Smith's voice crackled with a blend of surprise and curiosity through the telephone line. There was a palpable weight in the air, charged with the potential for collaboration but also laden with unspoken history. Mr. Johnson, Smith replied, his tone cautiously intrigued. You're calling to revisit the merger proposal? Yes, I think there is an opportunity for us to discuss a new direction, Matthew responded, his voice steadier than he felt. It surprised him how easily he slipped into a professional demeanor, despite the tumultuous emotions swirling within. A brief silence hung between them, a tension that both men felt acutely. Matthew could almost hear the gears turning in Smith's mind, and he focused on navigating his words carefully. What if we approached this not as competitors, but as partners? We could leverage each other's strengths. I'm intrigued, Smith replied slowly, as though tasting the words. However, your family has been at odds with mine for generations. What makes you think we could put that behind us? For Matthew, the question was a challenge. He took a deep breath, processing the weight of his family's bitter legacy, then decided to speak from a place of sincerity. Because I believe business is changing. Success doesn't have to come at the cost of collaboration. It's time to look at the bigger picture. He heard Smith exhale sharply, contemplating the offer. You're proposing a trust that doesn't exist? Trust can be built, Matthew asserted, a spark of resolve igniting within him. If we can work through our family's history, perhaps we can create something that benefits our companies and redefines what we represent. As the conversation unfolded, Matthew found himself gaining momentum, articulating ideas that had taken shape during the strategy meeting. He envisioned joint ventures that aligned their technological expertise with the Smiths' media reach, introducing innovative concepts that could disrupt their industry. "I'll admit, I'm not entirely sold," Smith admitted, but there was a cautious optimism in his voice now. "But I respect your willingness to reach out. Let's schedule a meeting. In person." The exchange left Matthew exhilarated yet apprehensive. A part of him was still wrestling with the notion that he was approaching the very family he'd been taught to view as a threat. Would they accept him? Could he truly dismantle years of animosity? As he hung up, his excitement began to dissipate, replaced with uncertainty. What if Smith was only toying with him? He sat at his desk, scanning the papers scattered across its surface, project timelines, budget reports, and now this monumental opportunity that loomed ahead like a double-edged sword. He shifted his focus, immersing himself in preparing for the meeting, but doubt crept in. Could he really present this new vision to the Smiths? Would they trust him enough to consider it, or would this blow up, intensifying the rivalry instead? Later that evening, Matthew met Stephen for dinner. Their usual catch-up felt different as the weight of his decision loomed large. "Have you thought about what your family might say?" Stephen probed, a note of concern shadowing his eyes. "This is a huge shift in ideology, Matthew." "I have," Matthew replied, fingers tapping anxiously on the table. "But I need to do this. It's not just about business. It's about accepting change and breaking free from an established narrative of hostility." Stephen leaned back, contemplative. "So, you're ready to face down not only external opposition but the internal demons raised by your father's legacy?" "I have to be. Otherwise, what's the point?" Matthew replied with a newfound fierceness. He felt alive, the potential of his choices sparking a fire within him. "It'll be a much different conversation than anything we've had before, but it's a move I believe in." As they finished dinner, Matthew understood the stakes were higher than ever. Not just for his company, but for his identity and the legacy he wished to build for himself, unshackled from the past. As he stepped out into the night, a sudden thrill coursed through him. This was only the beginning. The next few days would be critical. What awaited him at the negotiating table could alter not only the fate of their companies, but the narrative of their familial histories as well. Would he have the courage to see it through, or would he falter before the weight of tradition? The time had come to face the true test of his resolve. The days leading up to the meeting hovered ominously. Matthew spent hours poring over reports and scenarios, his mind racing with potential outcomes and pitfalls, sharpening his argument with each iteration. He imagined himself standing in that room, feeling the weight of attention directed at him, clashing with the deeply ingrained animosity of their families. An invigorating tension settled in his bones. This was not just a business deal, it was a personal reclamation. The night before the meeting, sleep eluded him. Matthew found himself wandering through the largely empty corridors of his family's office building, his thoughts echoing in the silence. Shadows of past conflicts lingered, memories of heated exchanges and family dinners turned sour. Yet, he also felt a burgeoning sense of purpose. He was not just Matthew, the scion of a feud. He was Matthew, the visionary willing to dismantle decades of rivalry. A sudden insight hit him. He could use the very history that had separated their families as a foundation for trust. Each bitter tale could be transformed into a narrative of resilience, one where both families might come together. He could present a partnership forged not in denial but in acknowledgement of their past. As he entered the conference room the next day, his heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. The glossy table reflected not only the harsh fluorescent lights, but also the weighty expectations resting squarely on his shoulders. He glanced up to see Mr. Smith enter, flanked by two of his powerful executives. Each step felt monumental, reminiscent of marching into battle. "Matthew," Smith greeted, the tension palpable as they extended their hands, the contact a charged connection of legacy and challenge. "Mr. Smith," Matthew responded, forcing calmness into his voice, before gesturing toward the seats. "Let us discuss how we can transform our futures." The conversation unfolded with a mixture of serious discussion and unexpected moments of levity. Matthew was pleased to find that Smith seemed genuinely intrigued by his ideas. He laid out plans for collaborative projects, each proposal backed by compelling data and strategic novelties. Yet, with every proposed idea came the whisper of doubt. Would they truly want to unite, or was this just a flash in the pan? Matthew noticed Smith's subtle reactions: an arched eyebrow, a softening gaze. Despite the tension, there was a growing curiosity. "You make a strong case, but what's in it for us?" Smith probed, though the challenge felt more like an invitation. Matthew seized this moment. "Imagine merging our strengths and redefining the narratives we tell our customers. We're not just selling products, we're selling a transformed legacy." The way Smith leaned forward suggested either interest or the weight of history pressing down on both their motivations. "Perhaps my family's legacy in media could use your innovative technology. But let us not ignore the elephant in the room: the years of rivalry. What assurance can you offer that this isn't just another tactic?" Matthew inhaled deeply. "This isn't just business for me. It's about setting a new standard. If we can acknowledge our family's histories, we can build a foundation of trust. Let's not forget, we both stand to gain." Just then, he felt the conversation pivot. The underlying animosity transformed into a shared acknowledgement of the burdens they each carried. "You're right. It's time for change," Smith replied. "But do we really have the courage to move forward together?" It struck Matthew then. This was the moment of truth. His entire life had revolved around the story his family had woven, but now he was redefining it. He wasn't just a Johnson. He was a man willing to face down tradition in the pursuit of something greater. As they continued discussing terms and visions, Matthew could feel self-doubt waning. There was no way to predict how this would end, but he knew he had taken a leap. With unexpected resolve, he proposed a timeline for actionable steps, steering the conversation toward tangible commitments. "Let us develop a joint task force within the month to explore these ideas further," Matthew suggested. The reality of their potential partnership had begun to crystallize, offering both men a glimpse into a future forged together. Yet, as they were about to conclude the meeting, a flurry of uncertainty raised its head anew. What if their families sabotaged the process? Would their own parents' legacies attempt to pull them apart once more? Matthew's heart raced anew, for while one chapter of confrontation was closing, another was eagerly waiting to unfold, heavy with its own burdens and potential. Little did he know, the struggle ahead would question the very core of who he was becoming and would ultimately redefine the legacy he sought to create. The true test of his resolve had just begun. Would he embrace this newfound direction, or would the weight of history bring him crashing back down? The days following the meeting brimmed with a mix of fervor and trepidation. Matthew found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of anticipation as he awaited Mr. Smith's response. Each moment felt laden with the significance of the future, his future, one he had begun to shape with the nascent belief that the past could be a source of strength rather than a shackle. In the office, he dove headfirst into research about the Smith family, their business strategies, and their historical achievements. This was more than a professional endeavor. It was an intimate exploration of potential allies turned adversaries. As he immersed himself in their legacy, he discovered a set of nuances he had previously overlooked: values underlying their decisions, struggles met with creativity, and sacrifices that resonated deeply with his own history. This understanding enriched his determination. He wasn't merely appealing to their business acumen but was also building a bridge of shared experience and resilience. Yet, amidst the burgeoning optimism, self-doubt brewed its own storm. Each time he sensed the excitement building within him, a whisper of apprehension followed. What if he was simplifying the immensity of their rivalries? Could he truly rally both families around a new narrative, or was he unwittingly setting himself up for heartbreak? These questions gnawed at him, provoked by an instinctive desire to create change in an environment where failure loomed large. On a particularly quiet afternoon, Matthew found himself huddled in his office, poring over potential project roadmaps. He had established the preliminary outline of the joint task force and was pondering what roles members from both families would play when an unexpected thought struck him. What if he could stage a project reveal not just as a business initiative, but as a profound act of reconciliation? How tangible would the partnership feel if they shared the spotlight in a united presentation, showcasing their collaboration to their employees and clients? It was then that Matthew realized the real challenge lay not in the logistics of the partnership, but in the public perception of it. He would have to confront the deeply rooted skepticism that surrounded their families. This newfound understanding kindled a fire within him. He grasped that the opportunity to speak against that skepticism would demand courage from both parties and transparency about their pasts. Matthew decided to invite Mr. Smith for a casual lunch. He wanted to broach the idea of a joint presentation. If they could generate mutual excitement and camaraderie, perhaps they could win over their teams. As he mentally prepared for the meeting, he couldn't help but reflect on how he had morphed from an anxious scion clinging to family legacies into a determined leader ready to forge a new path. With a clear purpose taking shape, he drafted an email cordial yet assertive and pressed send. As he leaned back in his chair, he felt the weight of a decision ripple through him. It felt as though he stood at the precipice of a transformative shift, both personally and professionally. The reply came quicker than he expected. Mr. Smith agreed, his words tinged with enthusiasm that amplified Matthew's own excitement. However, the tone of caution was unmistakable. "We must ensure our families are on board, Matthew. This won't be easy." Just as Matthew felt the high of this progress, doubt crashed the momentum. He envisioned their families' reactions, the tightly wound cords of distrust, disbelief, and history threatening to pull him and Smith right back into conflict. In that moment, standing atop a mountain of possibility, he realized he was being tested again. It was clear that he couldn't control the deeply ingrained animosities, nor could he change their histories overnight. But he could take the reins of this potential journey, fostering dialogue where confrontation had once been the norm. Yet the shadows of doubt lingered. Would the effort to mend these historical wounds crumble under familial pressure? Or could he inspire courage amidst the legacy of rivalry? Once again, he found himself at a crossroads, filled with purpose, but wrestling with the demons of self-doubt. As preparations for the collaborative project ramped up, Matthew knew that the future now hinged on more than just business innovation. The question remained, could he truly face history and bring forth the change he envisioned? He had a growing sense that this was just the beginning, one step in a longer journey threatening to test the very essence of his emerging identity. The time had come to face not just the past, but his deepest fears. What awaited him on the other side of vulnerability? The lunch with Mr. Smith unfolded in an atmosphere thick with both promise and apprehension. As they settled into a cozy corner of a restaurant, the hum of laughter and conversation enveloped them. Matthew fidgeted with his napkin, acutely aware of the weight the moment held. This was less about orchestrating a business meeting and more about laying the groundwork for something profoundly different, a reconciliation he desperately hoped could disrupt the status quo. "So, you mentioned a presentation idea in your email, Matthew." Mr. Smith's voice broke through Matthew's spinning thoughts, guiding him back to the agenda at hand. There was genuine curiosity laced with the critical eye of a businessman who had weathered many storms. "Yes, I believe showcasing our collaboration in a united front could send a powerful message," Matthew replied, striving to meet Mr. Smith's cautious tone with earnest enthusiasm. "It's a chance for both families to highlight their commitment to change. A chance to shift public perception." Mr. Smith regarded him thoughtfully, the furrows in his brow deepening. "How confident are you that our families would support this?" The question sliced through Matthew's carefully constructed facade, exposing the underlying anxiety. He hesitated, grappling with the reality of interwoven histories steeped in rivalry. "It's difficult to gauge, but I believe that if we present it as an opportunity for mutual growth, they might see the benefits," he offered, maintaining eye contact, forcing himself to project steadiness, even as self-doubt threatened to fracture his resolve. "Convincing them won't be easy," Mr. Smith replied, a hint of admiration lacing his reticence. "Yet, there is something about your conviction that is compelling." The compliment lit a spark within Matthew, yet the flicker of self-doubt quickly reined it in. The discussion progressed, with each exchanged idea uncovering layers of possibilities. Matthew felt a shift. He was no longer merely reacting to Mr. Smith's initiative, but instead beginning to take charge. Every proposal he made seemed to echo with a newfound clarity, as if the ghosts of their shared histories were offering him guidance rather than resistance. After the meeting, as the two men emerged back into the bustling throngs of the city, Matthew couldn't shake the sense of unease that clung to him like a second skin. The weight of family legacies felt heavier now. Each step along the street seemed to resonate with the expectations of their ancestors. His mind whirred with implications. If he failed to manage this collaboration effectively, would he not only let down Mr. Smith, but also disappoint the potential shared legacy they were beginning to carve out together? He quickened his pace, motivated by the thought that each moment of hesitation now required an equal measure of valor. By the time he returned to the office, the anticipation drained him. He sank into his chair, trying to regain composure. Recovering from a setback was one thing, but now he had to confront the looming specter of confrontation. How could he face their families and convince them to embrace this venture? What would it mean if they rejected the idea? The thought snaked its way into his consciousness. What if their skepticism and mistrust were stronger than his aspirations? He couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. Instead, he disciplined his thoughts. "You have to visualize success," he murmured to himself, standing up to take control of his thoughts, pacing the confines of his office. "You are more than the legacy of your family, you are the architect of a new path." As he contemplated the next steps, he felt a resurgence of determination. It wouldn't be enough for him to simply convince first the Smiths, then his own family. He needed to prepare for the inevitable pushback. He needed to craft a narrative that resonated beyond business metrics. Matthew grabbed a notepad and began drafting his strategy. He outlined points for family discussions, potential benefits both sides could gain, and ways to effectively navigate the emotional maze he knew they would encounter. The words flowed, each one more resolute than the last. The glaring screen before him felt like a beacon of clarity amid the chaos his fears transformed into actionable insights. Yet, despite the surge of inspiration, beneath the surface simmered deeper concerns. Would his efforts truly be understood, or would any movement toward reconciliation be thwarted by the ghosts of their past? Just as he scribbled his final notes, a knock sounded at his door. It was his assistant, bringing news that would set the course for the next pivotal step. But as she spoke, Matthew felt that familiar tingle of dread reassert itself. She had received news from the Smith family that could either fortify or fracture everything he had begun to build. "Matthew, you need to see this," she said, urgency in her voice. He straightened, every breath suddenly heavy with the weight of potential upheaval. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than expected, and Matthew stood on the brink of what could reshape not just his future, but the entirety of their intertwined destinies. Would the revelation be a step toward unity, or yet another fracture in the fragile bridges he was attempting to build? Matthew swallowed hard, anxiety coiling in his stomach as he gestured for his assistant to elaborate. He could already sense that this was more than just news. It felt like the pulse of his aspirations thumping in unison with the troubling unknown. She handed him a printed email with a slight tremor in her hands, her eyes darting up to meet his. "It's from Miss Smith," she said, using a tone reserved for the most delicate information. "She wants to discuss the collaboration further," but her voice trailed off, leaving an unsettling pause. Curiosity and dread collided in Matthew's gut. He scanned the email, and the implication struck him like a lightning bolt. Miss Smith was willing to meet, but she had concerns about familial backlash, suggesting that emotions were already escalating within her family regarding the idea of collaboration. There were mentions of long-standing grievances that ran deeper than both families had ever acknowledged. Failure to address them openly could lead to renewed estrangement. His heart raced at the realization. What began as an ambitious plan for unity now dangled precariously on the precipice of chaos. The family's histories were as toxic as they were intertwined, and the potential for conflict loomed larger than he had anticipated. Matthew felt the urge to withdraw, to bury himself in calculations and strategies. But deep down, he recognized this was the moment for decisive action. He had always been skilled in dissecting spreadsheets, but now he faced the true challenge of parsing human emotion, the nuances ripe with emotional rivalries and silent resentments. He paced his office, bottling his apprehensions into a lingering thrill of determination. It was here, amid the looming specter of confrontation, that he knew he had to find a way to build rapport with the Smiths. Drawing on their shared history, he needed to weave a narrative that would not only propose a business collaboration but tug at the heartstrings of their shared struggles. Matthew knew he must prepare for a confrontation with his own family too. A personal reckoning loomed on the horizon. They would need to confront the ramifications of their past choices and fears. Sitting back down, he drafted a list of key points. A communal history, a vision for both legacies, the acknowledgement of grievances, and a distinct stress on moving forward. His strategy took shape, capturing the essence of unity he sought to instill. Yet, hovering just beneath that rush of motivation was a nagging question. Would his family see this overture as an olive branch or yet another shackling reminder of their entwined animosity? He shoved the whispers of self-doubt aside, choosing to focus instead on a central belief: growth requires discomfort. He committed to touch on their grievances, to not shy away from the wreckage left behind by their enmity. If anything was going to change, it would start by tearing down these walls, brick by brick. With a newfound resolve washing over him, Matthew sent a response to Ms. Smith, proposing a joint family gathering. His voice felt steady, laced with genuine hope as he typed, "Perhaps our families can meet not as rivals, but as co-authors of a narrative shifting toward collaboration." As he clicked send, a single thought invaded his mind: would their pasts allow this new chapter, or was he simply inviting destruction into his already fragile vision? Before he could dwell further on the possible fallout, a new message popped up on his screen. It was from his mother. Her words were direct, but held an undercurrent of urgency. "We need to talk. There are some things from my past I've never shared with you. It concerns the Smiths." Matthew's heart dropped. The time had come to face not just the familial rivalries outside, but the hidden truths buried within his own lineage. What revelations awaited him could either cement this path towards reconciliation or unravel everything he had worked so hard to build. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment, a raw mixture of trepidation and anticipation thrumming through him as he prepared for the conversation that could change everything. Would understanding forge a new bond, or would it open old wounds that could not be healed? Matthew sat in his office, the fluorescent light casting a harsh glow on the cluttered desk in front of him. The email from his mother felt like a weight pinning him to his chair. As he looked out the window, the city sprawled below but felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else. This moment would not just change his professional path. To confront his mother meant to dive headfirst into the tangled lineage of family feuds, long-buried secrets, and unacknowledged pain. He steeled himself, recalling the times he had skirted around topics too sensitive to discuss. Growing up in a household with a father less inclined to share emotions had instilled in Matthew a stoic acceptance of silence. But things were different now. His role as a CEO had taught him the value of transparency and direct communication. He needed to embody those lessons in his personal life as well. Taking a deep breath, he typed a quick message to his mother. When and where? He hit send, then leaned back, waiting for the impending conversation. The uncertainty of what she might reveal sent ripples of anxiety through him. But he also felt an unexpected thread of excitement. Perhaps this was the catalyst he needed for the collaboration with the Smith family. Minutes felt like hours until his phone buzzed again, her reply illuminating the screen. "Tomorrow at 6. My place." That evening, as Matthew parked outside his family home, nostalgia washed over him. The familiarity of the neighborhood tempered the storm building inside. Hesitating at the door, he remembered moments of laughter shared around the dining table, now overshadowed by the coldness that had formed over years of tension with the Smiths. The moment he stepped inside, the warmth enveloped him like a blanket. But there was no feigned comfort here, only the anticipation of truth. His mother stood in the cozy living room, her expression a blend of warmth and worry. "Matthew," she greeted softly. "I'm glad you came." They settled into the living room, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. He could see in her eyes a flicker of hesitation before she began. "There are things you don't know, things about my past and your father's that connect us to the Smiths more than you realize." With every revelation that followed, Matthew grasped new threads of his family's history, each unraveling layer weaving him deeper into the fabric of his lineage and its entangled relationship with the Smiths. He discovered tales of youthful rivalry overshadowed by a shared community that had once thrived on kinship before bitterness took its toll. Your grandfather had an ally in Mr. Smith. They shared dreams until envy tore them apart, his mother elucidated, a tightness in her voice. "It's not just about business. It's personal." But love could have blossomed from those ashes if pride hadn't gotten in the way. Her words struck him. Each syllable was a revelation of hidden connections and lost opportunities. Questions raced in his mind. Had they all been blind to the possibilities? Could he break the cycle of resentment? "I want to try to reconcile, Mom. But I fear it's too late," he confessed, his voice thick with a mixture of hope and doubt. "It's never too late," she responded. Her eyes shone with a blend of sorrow and resolve. "But you must approach it honestly. Acknowledge what was lost. Only then can something beautiful grow in its place." Matthew nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He felt a surge of determination. If his family could own their past, perhaps the future he envisioned with the Smiths could materialize. But what if the truths he uncovered were too heavy? What if the secrets his mother revealed created insurmountable divisions instead of bridges? Before settling the issue looming over his familial ties, his phone buzzed again. It was Ms. Smith. "Looking forward to our family's meeting," it said, the implication of her message stirring excitement mingled with apprehension within him. As he stared at the screen, Matthew felt the swell of anticipation meet the edge of trepidation. Was he truly prepared to navigate the tangled web of emotions and histories? The path was clear, yet fraught with obstacles. Could he truly guide his families to a place of unity, or were they destined to spiral further into discord? He grasped the phone tightly, questioning if tomorrow's meeting would echo his mother's resolve or unravel everything he had planned. The following evening, the anticipation weighed heavily on Matthew's chest as he stood outside Ms. Smith's home. Each second felt elongated, a taut string ready to snap. The Smith residence loomed ahead, its facade a reminder of how intertwined their lives were destined to be. Inhaling deeply, he stepped forward, committing himself to this fragile endeavor. As he entered, a warm yet chaotic atmosphere enveloped him. The smell of freshly baked cookies mingled with laughter and chatter. Yet, each sound felt jarring against the backdrop of his escalating internal conflict. The Smiths were gathered in the living room, displaying a facade of warmth that only barely masked the tension beneath. He could almost feel the unspoken barriers between their two families. "Matthew," Miss Smith called out, her voice brightening the space. "So glad you could make it." He plastered a smile on his face, unsure if it reached his eyes, as he moved towards her. "Thank you for having me," he replied, sensing the weight of the moment pressing against him. A family meeting, that was what he had framed it as. But deep down, he recognized it as the first step toward reckoning. "Everyone, this is Matthew," she said, gesturing towards him. "He has been instrumental in the changes at Montgomery Enterprises." Her comment prompted nods and tentative smiles, but he could see the wariness in their eyes, reflective of a shared history mired in past grievances. How could he surpass the shadows of resentment with mere pleasantries? "Would you like something to drink?" Miss Smith asked as she led him toward the kitchen, away from prying eyes. "Sure, that sounds great." Matthew's thoughts raced. Here lay the platform for transformation, yet he felt ill-equipped, vulnerable, like a child unprotected amidst a battleground. The chance to mend fractures rested heavily, urging him to embrace candor. As they poured drinks side by side, he stole a glance at her profile. There was an innate strength behind her encouraging smile, a reminder that they had the ability to change their legacies if they dared to try. "I appreciate your willingness to meet," he began, feeling compelled to break the silence. "It means a lot." "I believe reconciliation is possible," she replied, her eyes locking onto his with sincere intensity. "But it requires total honesty. Can we both give that?" Her challenge reverberated in his mind, intertwining with thoughts of his conversation with his mother. "Yes," he stated, surprising even himself with the resolve that resonated within. "I'm ready." Returning to the living room, the gathered families began to engage more, but Matthew could feel the tension reaching a boiling point. As laughter bubbled up, he caught snippets of conversations, stories that danced around the history he was eager to reshape. Suddenly, those memories landed squarely on his shoulders, an avalanche of considerations. What truths were vital to their healing? What revelations might invite irrevocable change? The yearning to unveil the past and pave the way toward forgiveness pushed at the edges of his mind. He glanced at Ms. Smith, who was conversing with her father, a man he knew had shared an antagonistic relationship with his own. Matthew pondered how to kindle a spark of hope in this meeting that could break through decades of rivalry. As he opened his mouth to speak, children's laughter flooded the room, a moment of brightness cut through the clutter of adult concerns. Matthew felt a pang of longing and reflection wash over him. This was the future he wanted for himself, for both families. A future that should have been carved long ago. "May I have everyone's attention?" he called out, his voice unsteady but unwavering. The room quieted, eyes turning towards him, the weight of his words amplifying the tension. He took a deep breath, feeling the knot of apprehension churn in his stomach. "I want to speak about bridging the gaps between our families. I believe it begins with understanding." His words faltered as he caught sight of Ms. Smith's father, narrowing his gaze. In that moment, Matthew realized the potential for every wrong word to cultivate conflict anew. The power he wielded could either strengthen or unravel everything he sought to achieve. The path to unity was treacherous, but Matthew stood resolute. This was no longer simply about their history, it was about shaping their futures together. But as he focused, he sensed a new discord simmering beneath the surface. Would his candid approach risk igniting old wounds, or could it ignite a path toward enlightenment? The moment demanded clarity. The real test lay in whether he had the courage to push forward despite the mounting pressures surrounding him. And in that silence, in the stares locked upon him, the realization struck him like lightning. He was about to confront the most daunting challenge of his life, the truth of what had been buried for far too long. Would he uncover the personal revelations needed to transform their story from division into a collaborative future? The answer loomed ever closer. With palpable tension coursing through the air, Matthew took another deep breath. "I know our family's histories are fraught with conflict," he began, grounding himself with the reality of the moment. "I'm here because I believe we have the power to reshape our legacies. But to do that, we have to acknowledge the past honestly." His voice wavered but held firm. "We represent years of rivalry, yet within that rivalry lies the opportunity for truly unprecedented partnerships. Perhaps rather than focusing on divisions, we could examine where our interests align." He glanced around the room, gauging reactions. Some looked skeptical, others appeared curious. Encouraged by Ms. Smith's reassuring nod, Matthew pressed on. "I recently learned that our families once shared foundational values. There was unity before the rift. Your parents held aspirations of collaboration too. What if we were to consider that shared vision?" Before he could finish, Mr. Smith interrupted, his expression a mix of surprise and defensiveness. "You can't just gloss over decades of animosity. Those grievances run deep." "I understand," Matthew responded, keeping his tone measured. "That history is painful, but facing it is the only way forward." Denying our shared past only strengthens the chains that bind us. We must acknowledge not just the grudges, but also, perhaps, what led to those feelings. As silence filled the room, a child's laughter broke through, injecting a hint of lightness. Matthew took it as a sign, attempting to weave his hope into their candid discussion. Imagine a future where our children sit beside one another, embarking on opportunities we could never have fathomed as rivals. If we truly wish to change the narrative, we must confront our family's history before it's reported. A united vision must ripple through both our companies, a model that encourages collaboration over competition. Intrigued murmurs arose from his audience, prompting Matthew to intensify his focus, each word seizing the moment. I'm committed to doing the hard work to ensure both families benefit from this new horizon. We can bring together technology and media to create something that showcases our respective legacies in a positive light. Gradually, he caught glimpses of softening expressions, and he sensed momentum shifting. Let us start by forming a task force representing both families to explore tangible projects. Real initiatives. Together. Ms. Smith smiled broadly, her enthusiasm becoming infectious. I like this idea, Matthew. It's logical and innovative. Encouraged, Matthew found solace in her support. However, he still noticed Mr. Smith furrowing his brow. This cannot be that simple, he insisted. There are traditions, loyalties, and expectations. Acknowledging the reality, Matthew replied, yes, those exist. But change doesn't require sacrifices of loyalty. It asks for evolution of loyalties, adapting to circumstances. We can honor our family's past while simultaneously forging new paths rooted in cooperation. Adaptation, murmured Mr. Smith, considering the weight of the word. Precisely. Matthew smiled, sensing a breakthrough inching closer. Adaptation is core to survival, to relevance. This could redefine our families and show future generations that reconciliation is richer than reprisal. The room remained charged, and tension simmered, but glimmers of agreement flickered among those gathered. As Matthew concluded, he could feel his pulse return to its rhythm. The effort had not only been a bold professional move, but also a monumental act of self-definition, of articulating the man he aimed to become, someone who broke cycles, who explored new synergies rather than slamming doors shut. But the environmental realities loomed. A fresh wave of uncertainty rolled through him as he turned the conversation back to Ms. Smith. The need to conclude this chapter weighed on his mind. Would his candidness withstand the familial currents about to rattle the very essence of their interactions? In the warmth of his mother's reminders echoing in his heart, Matthew felt a final surge of fortitude. We have made incredible strides just by coming together tonight. My commitment echoes beyond this room. I am determined to dispel the shadows of our past that stunt our potential. Just then, Miss Smith's father chimed in, his voice steady yet revealing uncertainty. It's a challenging path ahead, but if we can agree on mutual respect, I might be willing to support this vision. A glimmer of hope ignited within Matthew as he laid bare the roadmap before them, a plan that appeared concrete, collaborative, and promising. As the conversation began morphing into productive dialogue, Matthew couldn't help but marvel at his transformation. Where once resided crippling doubts, fears of inadequacy, and loyalty, now stood a man unwavering in conviction. He had turned a tense family rivalry into a powerful opportunity for healing and growth. The deep satisfaction coursing through him transcended professional validation. It mirrored personal progress, a reclamation of narrative, not just for himself, but for both families. As the evening unfolded, a quiet acknowledgement settled over Matthew. He realized that the knots of the past bound tighter than he anticipated, yet he had taken an invaluable step towards unraveling them. They would sit down, face the demons together, and begin rewriting the embedded plots of familial histories. This evening heralded a beginning that would transcend both business and personal realms, an authentic journey rooted in mutual courage. It was in these moments of vulnerability and resolve where solid confidence emerged, casting aside the fraught narratives of yesteryears. Matthew embraced his growth, committed to not just envisioning a united future, but actively participating in its creation. As the meeting progressed, discussions delved into real action plans, carving out pathways to shared initiatives. It was evident that healing had taken root, and against all odds, a new chapter awaited. Reflecting on his journey through legacy and rivalry, Matthew recognized that true transformation stemmed from the depths of personal experiences and the courage to pivot from inherited pain to the promise of reconciliation. Now, with hope ignited and purpose clear, Matthew took a moment to steel himself for the next challenge, nurturing relationships and moving forward together. Emboldened, he looked to his fellow family members, envisioning a vibrant tapestry woven from both their histories and the mesh of futures they now sought to create together. It was a dream worth fighting for, one that demanded the courage to leap forward into the unknown. The transformation was not just for him, it was a collective endeavor forged in the fires of their shared past. This was the moment of closure the past acknowledged, the future embraced. And as Matthew charted this promising new trajectory, he comprehended the singular effect unity could evoke, laying aside centuries of division in pursuit of a brighter, unified legacy. Before leaving, he shared a parting note, one he hoped resonated deeply. To redefine ourselves, we must commit to the journey. We owe ourselves that much. For Matthew Johnson, this defining moment marked not just an end of familial divisions, but the opening chapter of a personally fulfilling legacy built on trust and mutual respect. As the night settled in and laughter mingled with shared goals, he embraced the weight of success achieved. In stepping into the unknown, they had taken the first major step toward a cohesive family narrative. And like a phoenix rising anew, each moment crystallized into a testament of personal triumph, one that resonated with real significance. That's the beauty of growth. It transcends boundaries. Our stories are meant to transform. Now, as you have journeyed through this transformation, it's time to embrace your own narratives by subscribing immediately to the channel. You need to subscribe now to unlock new emotional journeys that will inspire your growth. Leave a like now to boost our storytelling algorithm and ensure these lessons reach those who need them.
Share
your reactions and theories in the comments. Your insights matter. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, and support the power of transformative stories.